Hi, I'm Scott Moore, founder of Newton 360. I created Newton 360 after 30 years of working in EMS. What is Newton 360? Well, Newton 360 is an employee performance tool as well as an employee engagement tool that was designed specifically for EMS. Over the last 30 years, I've held every role from frontline EMT to supervisor, manager, director of HR, and CEO. In addition to that, I've been a call firefighter for 15 years, and for just over 17 years now, I've been an EMS and employment law attorney, serving in an HR consulting role to EMS organizations around the country. As one of the only HR consultants who focus specifically in EMS, I get asked often, what can we do to solve this ongoing problem that EMS agencies have had with recruitment and retention? Well, as many of you are now realizing or have realized for a long time, we are at a critical time for EMS, not just because of the pandemic response, but because it is a critical time for EMS professionals. This job is not an easy one. For those of you working on the front lines, it's a very tough job, but incredibly satisfying. Some of the challenges that we face, we play a critical role in public safety, as well as a critical role in the overall healthcare scheme. The challenge is often that we struggle to fit into both of those realms. And often many of the EMS organizations that we work for, the reimbursement levels aren't great. Sometimes the pay isn't wonderful, but we know that that's really not always the major driver for what makes someone join EMS, come into EMS. When I started years ago, I took a pay cut from working at a grocery store. It wasn't the pay that got me to come to this job that I love. It really was the work that we do. It's intrinsically valuable. It's amazing the work that we get to do, but still yet all of that wonderful stuff that happens in EMS, our industry has struggled incredibly to find or recruit and then also retain EMS professionals. It has been an ongoing struggle. So Gallup has been researching employee engagement now for well over 20 years. Employee engagement really is that thing, that glue that makes a workplace sticky. But one of the things that we know from the Gallup research over the last 20 years is that only 1/3 of the American workers are actually engaged while at work. They also have found that disengagement, so for that other 2/3 of workers who are not engaged, is costing American businesses roughly $550 billion. Organizations with engaged workforces or engaged employees actually are substantially more profitable, as well as really understanding the things that drive high levels or greater levels of engagement in an organization. Consistently, year over year, over the last 20 years, the research has come out and determined that one of the number one driving factors that drives high levels of engagement in organizations is the relationship between the frontline supervisor and their immediate field employee. So, what do we know about frontline supervisors? Well, most of the people who get into frontline supervision, we now know when research shows that they only get to engage, mentor, and coach employees about 6 to 8% of the time. There is no research in EMS, but what we do know, and you folks on the street know this better than anybody, most of the time, the only time you see a supervisor is if something's gone wrong or you happen to go back to the main. So not that everybody's dying every day to see a supervisor, but employees do like to know where they stand. They do like to know that they're supported. I happen to believe that frontline supervision major role is to be a coach or like a trainer to make sure that you can do your absolute best work. But what happens when we bring someone into supervision? By the way, those people who got into supervision because they wanted to coach and mentor employees. Well, we in leadership tended to pile them down with a whole bunch of stuff. We very rarely ever gave them enough training, but we piled them down with meetings and filling schedules and delivering supplies. And often what that comes is at the expense of engaging frontline employees. And so those distractions often cause a significant interference and often cause problems with effective communication or that regular and ongoing communication. And it turns out that most of you will only see your supervisor when there's a problem, or maybe at best during your annual performance review, right? So those are those times. They become infrequent. When they are infrequent, they tend to be uninformed. It's not at all uncommon, because we have rotating schedules and rotating supervisors, that the supervisor today has no idea what happened with you yesterday. And as a result, workers get frustrated because they want a leadership team that's cohesive and that can support them. It's not just simply about, putting them in an ambulance or making sure that they have the supplies they need. They want a leadership team that supports them so that they can do their best work. And lastly, I don't know about you, in all the years that I ever received reviews, and as much as I tried in all the years I ever gave reviews, I never really felt like the annual performance review was a meaningful process. In fact, often I felt like it probably hurt performance. What do we know about performance reviews? Well, and the American workforce, is that generally over 20% of workers do not feel that they get recognized when they do great work. Well, think about EMS and the nature of the work that we do. Oftentimes we're a distributed workforce. Oftentimes the work that we do never gets seen by anybody, or if it does, that message never gets carried from one supervisor to the next. Over 70% of employees feel that their company's current performance feedback helps them do great work. Think about your annual performance review or whatever performance feedback model you have today. Does that model drive you to do more work? I bet you it probably doesn't. 20% of employees are not confident that their supervisor will actually give them that regular constructive feedback, right? Constructive feedback, that feedback that will help you get better, right? That oftentimes does or is very difficult to find. And nearly half of all HR leaders feel that their annual performance evaluations are accurate, that they're not confident that they're an accurate appraisal of an employee's work. I know as an HR director for a very large service, I would often walk into a room with 20 some odd supervisors with a stack of 80 reviews, and I would say, okay, who sees John Smith today? And someone would say, I see him on Thursdays, I see him sometimes on Wednesdays, I see him sometimes on Tuesdays. And I'd say, well, someone needs to do the review. And there'd be this review form that had 20 or so things on it. And at the end of the day, someone would say, I'll do it. And what we knew, and I'd often see when I got that annual review back, I was not confident what was on that. The ratings on that sheet were accurate. And I felt pretty confident also that the employee probably didn't feel so either. But it's not all the supervisor's fault. Oftentimes, we haven't set the system up to allow them to give great reviews. Over 90% of companies surveyed feel that their current performance management process is highly effective in driving value. Why in the world do you do performance or give feedback? It's really to keep and have people doing what the organization needs to get done and to help people do the best work they do. There is no feeling better than when you know that you just did a great call, you did a great job for that patient, that you worked well in your team, and at the end of the day, that you're good at what you do. That is an amazing feeling. Nearly 60% of those same companies say that they feel it's an effective use of time, right? Or 60% say it's an ineffective use of time. And I would probably guess that that number is actually higher. But what do we know people want? Well, recognition is the number one thing that employees say their supervisor could give them that would help them produce great work. I'm not saying that we have to praise everybody all the time, but I do think we know this, that when you address people who are doing good work, they tend to do more of it. Nearly 75% of employees said that they preferred some form of ongoing feedback model over an annual performance review. Why? Well, if we think about it, how many supervisors actually monitor or see your work over the course of a year? And how does one person sit down and take that information that was witnessed by many, who probably is sitting inside different supervisory reports? Isn't it more valuable if you're getting feedback closer in time or contemporaneously with the stuff that you're doing? Because no matter what, It never fails. I hear from employees, if you have to issue some sort of corrective action, they say, I've done all this other stuff and you didn't notice that, but you did notice this thing. And honestly, that's just unfair. It's unfair to the employee and it's unfair to the supervisor. Nearly 70% of employees said that they would work harder if their efforts were recognized. And nearly 70% of employees who receive accurate and consistent feedback actually say that their jobs, they feel fulfilled in their jobs. Imagine now if you were heading into your organization to do your shift and you felt fulfilled, truly fulfilled for your job. And companies that have implemented an ongoing feedback model have recognized a 15% reduction in turnover. And I don't know about you, when I worked the street, I got tired of watching the revolving door, tired of constantly working with new people because our turnover was too high. What all organizations want, not only just the leadership, but the front line, is they want that revolving door to slow down or stop. 90% of HR leaders believe that ongoing feedback models are key to successful outcomes. So knowing all of this and having watched the broken system that we had of the annual performance review model, I thought about what could be a good tool that would put enough information that would allow supervisors to share information so that they were more of a cohesive team and could better support employees. I thought of or conceived of the Newton 360 model. The idea behind Newton 360 is to have a mobile application that gets that supervisor out on the road quicker, right? What do we know now? There's tons of research that says on average, your average frontline supervisor only coaches and mentors employees about 6 to 8% of the time. Well, what are they doing the other 94 to 90, 92 to 94%? Well, they're stuck in meetings, they're delivering supplies, and they're filling schedules, right? The reality is that's not helping you as a frontline employee, the one who comes in every single day. What you need, right? You've probably heard the old adage, 80% of the time of a supervisor's time is spent on 20% of the people. Well, the reality is I want those supervisors to focus on the 80% that are pulling the oars every single day, not really seeking anything, but because the supervisors are spending their time managing the exceptions, the rest of those who are doing consistent and regular great work don't get recognized at all. So the idea behind Newton 360 was to put enough information into the hands of those supervisors so that when they encounter you, they can give you some more personalized feedback, that it's relevant, that the supervisors work better in a team so that they know what's happening with you from day to day. And we also understand in senior leadership how often or how much time our supervisors are getting to actually engage employees. Today, we don't have any idea how often that happens. And like anything else, if you don't measure it, you certainly can't manage it. I fully believe that if organizations took all of that extemporaneous stuff that they have frontline supervisors doing and stopped them from doing that and told them to do nothing but support and engage the frontline field staff, that we would see a dramatic change, not only in the employee engagement, the satisfaction that employees have at their job, the fact that they feel like they're part of a team. There's nothing quite like that feeling. The idea behind Newton 360 was to say, we're going to find out, supervisor, exactly how often you're engaging employees. We want to know that you're giving frontline employees feedback on a regular basis, no longer just once a year, because that is pointless. That is not the kind of feedback that's going to change or improve outcomes. We also know that this was a tool that not just us giving you feedback, it's us asking you for feedback. We want to know how we're doing. It's not fair just to do a performance appraisal on your work. You should be doing a performance appraisal on our work, right? Why is what we think you're doing any more important than what you think we're doing? At the end of the day, and I said this when I was the CEO, I work for you, because if you're unhappy with what I do, you're not going to be here anymore. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to be here anymore. So the idea behind Newton 360, and the reason I called it the third law of performance management, was because Newton's third law is for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And I believe the employment relationship is 50-50. You are no luckier to have this job than I am to have you working here. What's in it for you as a frontline employee? Well, you're going to get regular and ongoing feedback. Now, initially, when you start using Newton 360 and the supervisors start using Newton 360, the one thing you're going to find out is it's shocking how little time or how infrequently we actually engage employees. You already know that. The problem is we need you to help us, tell us, and let us know what we need to be providing you. You're going to receive more relevant and personalized feedback, right? You'll have a better confidence that the person giving you feedback actually has some related information. There will be some information that is in front of them or available to them more contemporaneously. You're going to be able to provide the supervisor with regular and ongoing feedback. And I can hear it now. A few employees might say, oh, no, I'm not giving honest feedback to that supervisor because if I do that, they're going to kill me in future reviews. Well, I considered that. And here's the deal. You are no luckier to have this job than we are to have you working for us. It's just as important about how we're doing as it is about how you're doing. If in fact a supervisor ever changed their ratings of you because of ratings that you gave them, we are going to see that in the system and we'll address that behavior. You don't have to worry. Anyone who ever retaliated against someone because you gave them honest feedback really needs to take a look at the way that they do their job, and we'll be able to address that. The feedback process is going to be transparent, right? You're never going to be in that situation where somebody goes to write you up or someone goes to say something about your performance that you don't already know. All right. You're always going to be aware. So sometimes I've heard people in unionized workforces aren't going to like this. And what I say, you should love this, right? Because not only will you always know what the leadership team has to say about your performance, but you're also going to be given a chance to give the leadership team some feedback on their performance. It's transparent and it's balanced. The idea behind Newton 360 is that when you have a transparent, regular, accountable way, you will always be notified when a supervisor has provided you with performance feedback. So you'll always know. You will always be able to see that feedback provided by your supervisors, and you will always have the ability to respond and comment to that feedback provided by your supervisors. And best, that total transparency, right, in what they've said about you and what you've said about them will create a balanced and more accountable and trusting work relationship. The goal is not to do more of what we've done for the last 30 years. This is a platform that will help transform the way you work at an EMS agency and the way EMS leaders manage an EMS agency. This is a change. It's going to be something that you're probably not used to, but I will tell you, this will change the way you engage your workplace. The idea is to try and transform the performance feedback model, right? This looks like a relatively dramatic image, but the bottom line is this. I developed Newton 360 to try and provide enough information into the hands of both the supervisor and the employee so that they can know, the supervisor and the employee always know where they stand, that we each have relevant and important information about each other so that we can give meaningful feedback. The bottom line is, it's about a trusting relationship. The work relationship is no different than a friendship or any other serious relationship between two people. It's important that we take care of that and that we monitor it and that we nurture that relationship. So there will be more videos about the how to use Newton 360, but this was really the what's in it for you on the front line. What's in it for you on the front line is that you will now, from this point forward, once you start using Newton 360, have a balanced, transparent relationship. You will know where you stand. You will always see the feedback that's been given to you, and better off, you'll be able to provide some of those frontline leaders with information about how you need to be led. So you can go now to the Apple Store, or you can go to the Google Play, depending on the type of device you have, and you can download the Newton 360 app. What you're going to need, of course, is your agency code, which you'll get from your HR person, as well as your username and password. But what I will say this is, give it a shot. The bottom line is, these annual performance reviews that we've been doing now forever, how effective are those? Not terribly, in my opinion. And so I think it's important that if we expect to change or we want some different outcome, that we make a decision to do something different. I thank you for your time. I appreciate you watching the video. And if you have questions, of course, you can go to www.newton360.com, or you can email me at smoore, SMOORE, @newton360.com. Thank you.